Hi everyone, I hope you're all keeping well. Today I'm hoping to do a labour video, so basically going through the details of my labour. I do have my handy bit of paper here, so apologies that I'll be referring to that throughout. I just want to make sure obviously that I don't miss any important bits for you all, and hopefully I can continue to do this video. I've got Isla feeding. She just fed for like 40 minutes and then she was showing signs of wanting to feed again. So she's on the boob. I don't know if it's more for comfort at the moment, but she's happier being there. So hopefully when she latches off, I can hide my boob and don't have to reshoot this whole video again. So just a little bit of a disclaimer. Obviously, I'm not a health professional. This is just me sharing my experience of my labour. Obviously, everyone's birth story is so different. I did have a birth plan, which I suppose I could maybe share with you all. I could even maybe put it in the comments or something and just attach it to this video so that you can see that. Or I can, do another video on it. I'll just see how we go. But yeah, my birth plan or my birth thoughts, which I like to call them, some of them obviously we followed through with, like movement, trying to move as much as I could during it. I had meditation and all of that jazz, but I think I've written that a bit further along, so we can go over that in a bit. But basically, my birth vlog, let's start it now. So I had to be induced, or I was recommended to be induced by the medical professionals. So Isla has a bit of an issue with one of her kidneys, so it just doesn't flow as well as the other kidney does. So that was why they felt that she would have to be induced a few days after a due date if she was to go past the due date. So the due date was the 6th of July, and so I was booked in to have my induction on the 9th of July. Then a few days before my due date, I had a bit of reduced movement. So I went into the maternity unit at the Leicester Royal, and they just basically recommended that because I'd had reduced movement, because obviously I knew her best, that potentially they might move forward my induction or keep it being the 9th. They then decided to move it forward a few days before her due date, which was the 6th, as I said. So the induction got moved to the 3rd of July. I was told when having my induction, or when I was told about my induction moving forward, that, I'd call up at 8 a.m. the day of, and they would basically tell me yay or nay whether the induction will go forward. They did tell me not to get my hopes up, but obviously it's a little bit difficult not getting your hopes up when you've obviously got to pack everything and make sure you've got everything ready. So you kind of naturally just feel as though it's going to happen. To be honest, the day that I had the reduced movements, when they said to me, oh, we've just got to call up to, see if we can push forward your induction or when your induction date will be, I was kind of ready that day that if they were to say, yep, we're going to go upstairs, we're going to start it now, I kind of like mentally felt ready. So I was a little bit worried when they said, oh no, it's going to be next Tuesday or wherever it was. Because in my head I thought, oh my gosh, they might suddenly say to me that it's going to be now or something. But yeah, it was a few days later, which was fine. So I called up on the 3rd of July, like they said, at 8 a.m. sharp, and they told me that I wasn't going to be able to be induced today, which obviously was a bit of a shame. They didn't really give me a reason at that point, but then someone called up later on and just apologised again and just said they had a lack of cribs actually, or cots, which was a reason I never thought that could be a reason as to why you won't be induced. I thought it might be obviously because there's a long line of people before me or like emergency things that happened that would lead me not to, but that was the reason that I was actually given. So that was fine. So I treated myself, actually I said to myself if it wasn't going to go ahead, I was going to go watch the new Little Mermaid film at the movies. So I went and did that. So I was a bit disheartened, to be honest. I got a little bit emotional and I thought, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. I've never been to the movies by myself, and two, thought it could be something that I treat myself to if I just want like an hour or two, well, more like 2 hours, You know, when I feel comfortable leaving Isla, just a fiver for the movies at the Meridian in Leicester. Obviously super cheap. I always pay more for the popcorn and the drink that I get. But yeah, so I thought, you know what, just do it. So I went and watched The Little Mermaid, got my popcorn and my drink, was really happy. And then midway through the movie, I looked at my phone. I had a missed call and I had a message from my partner saying, "Don't panic, dot, dot, dot." I was like, oh my gosh. So read the message and he said that they actually called to say that I could come in. So apparently, like my partner said, oh, she's actually at the movies at the moment because she was told that it wasn't going to go ahead. And they said, you know, no worries, no, like there's no rush, just come when you're ready sort of thing. So I went out of the cinema, called my partner and he said, literally don't rush. He had a few things to tie up at work as well. He was working it from home. And so, okay. Are you resting now? Okay. So, yeah, so I ended up finishing the film, which was bizarre. I remember just sitting there being like, should I leave? Like, what should I do? And I thought, no, I'll take this time because I'm not going to get this time back. And that's very true. I'm glad I stuck to my guns and, yeah, stayed and watched the film. And then, so it was about like 2:30 by the time I got home, put everything in the car because it was all in the hallway. And yeah, we set off. My induction, so I got assessed. I couldn't have the, what was it, like the balloon? I don't know the technical term, sorry. So I had to have the pessary. So it's kind of like, it looks like a tampon sort of thing where they put it up there. And yeah, it does what it needs to do. So it releases the hormones, don't quote me, but it releases things that kind of like try and kickstart everything. So my contractions from the induction didn't actually start till around 9 p.m. And unfortunately the visiting hours are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So as I was starting to like get contractions, or my first lot of contractions, my partner had to go. So that was difficult. Obviously it's a little bit hazy now. I obviously got through it and it was fine. I had like paracetamol throughout, which didn't really do anything. I actually felt like it made me worse at times. Like I felt like a few minutes after having paracetamol they gave me, I actually felt like my contractions got a little bit stronger. Or so I don't know if that's a thing. When I said that to the midwife once I was up in the delivery suite a lot later on, she said that can happen. So yeah, something to take note of. So if you are obviously in labour and you feel like the paracetamol might be making things worse, which instead of better, not by lows, but I could just feel like the pain wasn't going. It just felt like it was increased for a little bit. So that can be a thing. So just something to watch out for. Let me just look at my notes to make sure I'm following everything. That's fine. Yeah, so something I didn't really think of is you're obviously put into a ward, which is fine. It's weird because I'd never really been in hospitals before. I was a premature baby. I was 9 weeks early, so obviously a lot of my early life was in hospitals, but I've never spent really a big time in hospitals. I had like a viral infection a few years ago and I was in hospital for a few days. But apart from that, I've been really fortunate, so I didn't really know what to expect. So yeah, when you go into the ward, so when you're being induced or when you're in really, really early labour, you're in a ward with about 4 people. Well, mine had 4 sections, so a total of 4 people could be obviously in there. I had, I believe, 2 people, so I had one person across from me and a person to the side of me at that stage when I first went in, and there's all curtains as well. So yeah, I was put in this room. My partner parked up and then he met me in there, and that's when they put the pessary in. And then later on I was moved to another ward where I stayed then for a lot longer. A little side note, I don't want to like go into too much detail because this is also already 9 minutes long, but basically I nearly saw a woman give birth in the first ward that I was in, because she was 6 centimeters dilated apparently, and she kept feeling like she needed to push, and I think she was in the transition stage where she just wasn't making sense. She felt like she needed to go to the bathroom, which I then understood completely when I was in labour, because I felt the same. And she wasn't vocalizing what her needs were. And then next minute she was pushing, and the midwives were like, no, like, it's not time, it's not time. It was time. She dilated really, really quickly, and her body knew what it was clearly doing, and they had to rush myself and two other like sets of people out, because she then started to actually push, and the baby was delivered in a ward, which obviously doesn't usually happen. You're usually in the delivery suite. That was a really quick side note, sorry. So to try and like speed things up, because I'm already at 10 minutes, goodness me. So basically Will was left at 9 p.m. when I started having the contractions. Obviously then that was like 12 hours had passed, and I'd been having contractions pretty frequently. They ended up being like every 2 minutes for a day and a half. The paracetamol, as I said, made it a little bit worse. So I just ended up like not wanting paracetamol. So when they checked me, I think it was like I was 3 centimeters, and this was like a day and a half, nearly 2 days had gone by, and I lost it a little bit in my birth plan, which I hadn't actually shown anyone at this point when I was just on the ward. I did say that I didn't want to know how many centimeters dilated I was, because I thought that it might be disheartening, and at that point it was disheartening, because I'd already been, and I wasn't even thinking about dilation or anything like that. I was just kind of going through the motion. But when they said, oh, you're 3 centimeters, you can't go up to the delivery suite, or you're 4 centimeters, that's when I kind of lost it a little bit, because I thought I was knackered. I'd already obviously been having contractions for a day and a half to 2 days, 2 minutes apart at times, like a lot of the time. And, the paracetamol it was obviously not working. So I just wanted the gas and air. I just really wanted the gas and air. I needed something just to get me through it, something a bit sturdier. When they told me I was 3 centimeters, I lost it a little bit. I then was actually physically sick quite a lot. I then felt like, I felt like I needed to go to the bathroom basically, like for a number 2. So I kept asking them to bring the commode over, and they were like, no, it's just the pressure, But obviously when you feel like you might need to go to the toilet, you're going to ask for assistance. So they kept bringing that over. Meanwhile, this is all when I'm in the ward. So I lost it a little bit. I don't know how long it was for, if it was for an hour or what. But basically they ended up saying, okay, you've been obviously in this situation for quite a long time now. So then they ended up finding me some space to go into a delivery suite, which is what I needed. And by the time I got assessed again, I was 4 centimeters. So I said, please, kindly, can I have the gas and air? And I had the gas and air, and that just took an edge off that I hadn't had yet. So hours went past. So I was listening to meditation, listening to breathing, listening to calming music, water. I would just kept saying to my partner, water, please give me water. And by the end I was just like, water, because the gas and air, I was already wanting lots of water anyway, because through my breathing and all of that, because it was days of breathing through it. And then when I had the gas and air, you do get a really dry throat, dry lips. So I would recommend having water that has a straw in a bottle, so it's really easy, so you don't have to keep tipping your head, because that's just something you don't need when you're in labour. And also Vaseline or lip balm, and your partner can put it on, or you can put it on. When I was on gas and air, I wasn't thinking about my lips. It was more when I was later on, when I mentioned that I have a epidural, that I think I put some on. But anyway, so hours went past, and then Will was really encouraging throughout it all, my partner. He was fantastic, and helped me breathe through the contractions. There is an app that we had that timed my contractions. I will link that. I'll make sure I link it, because basically throughout the whole induction process, before I was up in the delivery suite and during the delivery suite, my partner basically could tell me how long I had left. Like he could either say you're halfway through like the contraction, or you're almost there, or you literally you've got 10 seconds left, and that kind of thing. And that helped me a lot. So I knew I was either like through the worst of it. So I'll link that, because that really helped me. And so hopefully that can help some of you as well. So the thing with the epidural, so I didn't not want an epidural. So I kind of went into labour being like, I want to try all the natural remedies, do what I can naturally, movement, all of that. And then I was really happy to have gas and air before labour. Wasn't like opposed to it. I wasn't opposed to anything. But then, epidural, I was really, really open to. I didn't want to be that person that said I didn't want one and then feel like I was like umming and ahhing, or I didn't want to be in a situation where I felt like I couldn't have one. It was more the other people's opinions that I was worried about, which is silly because everyone that I know and I love would just want Isla to be here nice and safely and for me to not be in pain and that kind of thing. You obviously don't get a gold star for not having an epidural or not using pain relief, and that's something that my NCT lady, like the leader, said. And as soon as she said that, I was like, it's so true. As long as your baby gets here nice and safe and you're safe and you're happy, that's all that matters. So I kind of went into the delivery suite just mainly wanting gas and air, and my midwife then at the time looked at my birth plan. I was potentially wanting a water birth, but obviously I wasn't in a situation where I could necessarily have one, which is fine. And that was just like a little extra that I wouldn't have minded because I like baths. So as soon as I got actually there, I had a shower, I think, unless I've not written that in my notes. I'm sure I did. But then yeah, that's right. The drain then wasn't straining properly. So there was like a big puddle, and my partner had to ask the midwife, like, do you know how to make sure that it's draining properly? And she was like, oh, I'm not sure. And then I ended up just going and getting changed into some other clothes suitable for delivering her, a bit more like comfortable. But yeah, I forgot about that little detail. But basically, I kept having the anaesthetists come in. So it happened 3 times. So the people that provide the epidural, they kept coming in being like, epidural in here? Like walking in all confident that I was wanting epidural. And it happened like quite early on. And then I was like, no. And then my midwife was great at saying, oh no, we're not ready yet. Or no, we've not decided on, what route we're kind of heading. And it wasn't until like further on that my midwife said is at this point that I would recommend, that you potentially have an epidural, because she didn't say that she's about to get real, but she just said like, you're going to be put on this, and I would just recommend it now is the time that you have to make the decision, which was great. So I'm glad that she told me that. And I believe I had in my notes that I wanted to be told, if it came to a point where it was either I could have one or not have one, I wanted to be told that if it was necessary. So she followed through with that, which was brilliant. So I finally, after like 3 times, anaesthetist coming in being like, epidural in here, which my midwife said, this never happens, like they're obviously all free, or it was just bizarre. We finally said that yes to having one, and I had one within the next like half an hour or something like that, not even. Obviously it took time to then get it done, which I didn't know how long it would take to get an epidural done, but that was a bit, not freaky, but I just knew that every time that a contraction was happening, I obviously have to tell them, and I had to be breathing through the gas and air, and just knew that I had to be really still. And so that was probably for me the most tense bit, because I didn't want to do anything wrong. And I kept apologizing, which they kept saying, don't apologize. And then when I wasn't sure if a contraction was happening, if I was a bit like 50-50, not sure if it was happening or not, I still told them, obviously, because I wanted to be overcautious rather than under. But I kept apologizing all throughout labor. I just, didn't want to be a nuisance. And then after I had the epidural, it was then due for me to have another assessment. So they don't just assess you all the time. Like, they don't assess you willy-nilly like down there. They have like set times so that they can then assess you again. So I had the epidural, opted for that, and then they assessed me. My assessment time was 15 minutes after that. So at this point, I'd not thought about centimeters. I didn't think, I don't know why, I just wasn't thinking about that. I was just, but I kept feeling like I wanted to push as well. And that's why they recommended the epidural, because my body was clearly trying to push and do things, which it felt really good to do. But at the time it was like, no, you're not ready to push. So it's going to do damage, if anything. Then 15 minutes later, I had the assessment. And my midwife was like, oh my gosh, you're 9 centimeters. So she thought I would only be 5 to 6 centimeters. So I basically went from 4 centimeters to 9 centimeters in 4 hours or something like that. So really, really quick turnaround, which is obviously good for me because the induction was such a long-winded process. So I'm glad that my active labor, I don't know why I did that. My active labor was a lot quicker than being induced and everything. So yeah, that was crazy. So my partner and I were really shocked about that. As well, I didn't say this, but as soon as I had the epidural, felt normal. Felt like how I'm talking to you now. Nothing hurt. I obviously couldn't feel like any pain. It was just bizarre. Like I was just talking, and my partner he couldn't believe the difference from going from like days of just really out of it, and then obviously the gas and air. I felt so drunk off it, I remember speaking to my midwife, and because I pretty much had it straight away, I felt like I'm talking to this midwife. She's gonna be helping me through this all, and I feel intoxicated. I remember just looking at her, feeling like I was doing these ones, of being like, I feel really drunk right now. And she's like, that's fine. Just keep sucking away. Keep breathing it in. That's good. It's fine. So going from like really out of it, and that's why I was happy to have gas and air, because I knew as soon as you stopped having it, you felt normal again. Whereas I know you can have certain tablets that make you feel nauseous and feel sick and that kind of thing. So that's why I did want more the gas and air to kind of start with and then see how I went. But yeah, so that was insane. So we ended up having really great conversations about how my partner and I met. We spoke to her about being a midwife and like just having really, really lovely conversations. We were laughing, and I said, I told you I'm bubbly. I'm a bubbly person, because obviously when you're in that stage of labour and in a lot of pain, you're not showing your personality either. Not that they care, like it's not, they're used to it. But yeah, I just remember saying, see, I am bubbly. I'm not just, like miserable or like out of it sort of thing. Hey, Baba. So we then had to wait 2 more hours because they generally say you move half a centimetre every hour, or is it? Yeah, I think something like that. So for me to then be 10 centimetres to be then able to start to push. So when it got to pushing and throughout, they kind of thought that my baby was either back to back, but then we kind of established that her head was just to the side. So yeah, that's also another reason why they were opting potentially for the epidural as well for myself, and her like ops were dipping a little bit. But yeah, started pushing once I reached 10 centimetres, so it was all full steam ahead. And I was pushing for an hour. Obviously with the epidural, I couldn't feel anything, so I had no idea like if I was pushing right. And there's definitely a technique. Obviously, when you can feel things, you know what you're doing. But when you can't feel anything, you're literally just mentally trying to, like, I was trying to envision trying to go for a big poop, because that's what they said. And obviously I couldn't feel anything. So I was like doing it, but yeah, it was a strange concept. So she literally, too much information, but she literally had to guide me with her fingers to try and like poke, to be like, this is where you need to be pushing within. Obviously I couldn't feel anything, so I was like, you do whatever you need to do, that's fine. And since I've talked to people, and that's quite common, to get guidance and assistance from your midwife. But yeah, now went past and still no baby. So they had to ask for the doctor to come and approve for me to continue pushing. So the midwives were a bit worried because I've been pushing then. I was approved for 2 hours, but my contractions suddenly slowed down. So they were coming like every 10 minutes, which was crazy. And obviously I couldn't feel them. So it was really difficult knowing when to push. Again, my midwife guided me, and I just, instinct, when I felt like I was contracting, we just kind of went for it. Hey, baby. So yeah, 2 hours kind of passed, but we got that approved. And then there was a point where they were like, okay, no, this baby does need to come out now, because her ops were dipping a little bit, but then coming back up. So, and obviously I was knackered, and that obviously put stress on myself and the baby. So there was a period where we weren't sure if I was going to have a C-section. I think it was literally dependent on the doctor on the day. So the doctor that came in, he was quite confident, quite a confident chap. Pardon me. And he promised, he said, I promise you will have a vaginal birth, like I promise. So I was like, that's really good. But then that was when I'd only been pushing for an hour. So then when it was 2 hours in, I was just like, I'd hate, not that I had anything obviously against having a C-section, but because it had been days in the making, I just thought I really would have experienced quite a lot, all different aspects of labour and delivery and stuff if I then had a C-section at the end of it. But they opted for a ventouse, So we didn't do the forceps, we did the ventouse, which is basically like a plunger that they then kind of stick on the baby's head or place on the baby's head. And then when I'm pushing, they then pull, sort of thing. So that then required a lot of the medical team to come in. So it went from having my midwife and another midwife called Patience, and my midwife was called Rona. It went from those two lovely ladies assisting me to then being them, as well as a kind of whole team of people. So yeah, that was fine. I didn't really let that worry me. I just thought the more people, the better. So yeah, I wasn't nervous at all, but I was nervous more for the pushing, because I knew that I had to do a good push, and obviously not being able to feel things properly. I wanted to make sure my technique was right and that kind of stuff. But we got there in the end, and yeah, she was born at 6:32 on the 6th of July, which was her birth, like her due date that was given originally. Well, originally my app said the 3rd of July, and I think my first medical thing said the 3rd of July, which is my bestie's birthday. So I was hoping for the 3rd of July, but that was obviously my induced date, which is still really special. And then, yeah, my official due date was the 6th of July, which is when she was born at 6:32 in the morning. And also when she came out, she had the cord wrapped around her, which also would have been why it was so difficult to get her out. It wasn't too tight, obviously, but we didn't know that that was happening. And so that would explain why her ops were kind of dipping as well. So she's here fine. She had a little mark on her head where the ventouse was, and that's pretty much almost gone. I don't even notice it now. So that is my delivery. So I might do another video at some point about what kind of happens afterwards, because I had no expectation about what happened after she was delivered. So because this has already gone on for nearly 27 minutes, I'll hold fire and do another video on what happens after your baby is here, because I think that's really good for people to know as well. So if anyone does have any further questions, just obviously write it in the comments, and I will either make another video or I can just comment on the comments that are written below, and then I can maybe share a list on what I packed or do a video on that as well if people want that. But yeah, I definitely think having a birth plan is good in terms of if you're someone that likes to put pen to paper and just take what's in your mind and put it somewhere so you don't have to then think about it. I also think it was good for my partner because he knew what I wanted, but he also knew that I was very open. So I had no kind of qualms about, if I was then to have epidural or a C-section, or I just literally went in with it, just wanting the baby and myself to be here safely. And yeah, I think it was more worrying about what other people's thoughts were on pain relief and that kind of thing. But then at the end of the day, when Isla is, going on a first date, or when she's meeting a new person, a question that they don't ask you, oh, how were you delivered? Like, that's nothing. Like, once your baby's even like a few months old or a year old or whatever, no one even cares. So it's not like it's a question that's gonna, it's a weird thing. I think we all have, like, people just fixate on it, don't they? But yeah, don't call it a birth plan, call it birth thoughts or a birth guide. But yeah, it's good to have in terms of, putting pen to paper and making sure that you've done your research so that you've got all the tools. So when you are kind of in that moment, if you want certain things or don't want certain things, or you can make like an informed decision. But yeah, so that's me. So yeah, I didn't have a water birth. I told, they did tell me obviously how many centimeters dilated I was, which affected me when I was just at 3 centimeters. But obviously when I was told I was 9 centimeters, it was a win. So obviously there's pros and cons to being told how many centimeters you are. And I did move around as much as possible, but once I was in the delivery suite, they did have to hook me up. So that was a shame that I couldn't be moving around loads. But yeah, once I reached a certain point, they had to monitor me. And so I couldn't, bounce on the ball, but I was bouncing on the ball and moving around for a good day and a half to 2 days before she was here. So I deserved the rest. And that's another thing. When I had the epidural, I had a 30-minute nap, which was a really deep 30-minute nap, which obviously I hadn't slept for a while, so that was good. But yeah, that's my birth vlog, or my labour vlog. And if anyone has any questions or wants to get in contact with me about anything, please just either write on comments or you can message me on Instagram even. I'll put all my contact details on the next clip. All right, see ya. Bye.